This is a production of PBS Charlotte.
Just ahead on Carolina Impact.
The Charlotte Chamber goes on the road with the Charlotte Hornets. I'm Jeff Sonyer. Stick around. We'll tell you how the Chamber hopes to turn basketball overseas into investment overseas.
From the streets to a safe place to live. Coming up, I'll show you how one local organization works to combat chronic homelessness.
Plus, former North Carolina State Senator Malcolm Graham shares about his sister's death in the Charleston mass shooting last year. Please don't go anywhere. Carolina Impact starts right now.
PBS Charlotte presents Carolina Impact, covering the issues, people, and places that impact you. This is Carolina Impact.
Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Amy Burkett. The Charlotte Hornets aren't the NBA's best team, or its worst, but after two sellout exhibition games against the LA Clippers in China this season, the Hornets are creating a buzz in Beijing, and that could be good for business right here at home. Carolina Impact's Jeff Sonyer joins us now with more on the Charlotte Hornets and their new teammates, the Charlotte Chamber.
Yeah, Amy, when the Charlotte Hornets leave the friendly confines here at Time Warner Cable Arena for a road trip to China.
Hello, ni hao, ni hao.
Well, you know it's about more than just basketball.
International.
5 to shoot. Lin, 3, go! They love it in Shenzhen.
Which is why the Charlotte Chamber is trying to turn layups and lobs
Ripping the lob for Jordan
into startups and jobs. It helps when your team owner, Michael Jordan, is still, you know, Michael Jordan in any language.
Charlotte Hornets future with the NBA.
And when you've also got Chinese fan favorite Jeremy Lin on your team, well, Charlotte, maybe now you've got China's attention.
That brought a huge amount of exposure for Charlotte in that marketplace, and it's something we will leverage going forward, making sure that people know that we're from the community where Michael Jordan, owns the basketball team and Jeremy Lin, plays for them. So it's big for us.
Charlotte Chamber VP Jeff Edge says basketball is another way to connect with Chinese business leaders and eventually Chinese business dollars. This new Charlotte office building, for instance, its financing comes from Chinese investors.
How many people in China realistically have heard of or know about Charlotte? So we need those types of opportunities where something gets in the mainstream media and other venues there to kind of get the word out.
But selling Charlotte overseas with a high-profile assist from the Hornets Hall of Fame owner and the team itself and the NBA's entourage of Chinese fans and media, well, that's not how the Chamber usually rolls.
Quite the contrary. It sounds great. Oh, you got to go to Paris, you got to go here. It's usually airports, it's hotels and boardrooms, and a lot of driving and traveling in between.
Sven Gersler is the guy the Charlotte Chamber sends to Europe and India 3 or 4 times a year looking for new business. And he faces some of the same challenges that the Chamber found in China.
We are not New York, we're not Florida, we're not Disney World, what most Europeans would know about the US, and go on vacation. So what we need to do is go out there and tell them, yes, Charlotte exists, this is where Charlotte is. Usually when I tell them Charlotte, they all say, oh yeah, but you can tell by the face they couldn't place it.
But Gersler says European businesses looking to grow in the U.S., like the German energy company Siemens with their plant on Westinghouse Boulevard, they're learning Charlotte has advantages that many other American cities don't. For example, Charlotte's busy airport is still smaller than Atlanta's, but once you fly into Charlotte, you can be at your uptown offices in 15 minutes, or at your suburban plant in half an hour. Try that in Atlanta. Gersler says it's a similar story for foreign companies looking for the right workers.
If they go to a too small town, too rural area, they might not be able to attract the talent they need to. If they go to a New York City, they get the talent, but they got to pay for the talent. So we're actually in the sweet spot where we have everything. We just need to get the word out. And that's what we do.
2 expansions, 3 expansions. Then we have a brand new one, Footprints, here.
Carlisa Parker does her selling to foreign firms 40 miles south of Charlotte, in Chester County, South Carolina, where they offer what Charlotte doesn't have: large tracts of inexpensive land with easy access to roads and rail, plus easy access to Charlotte, which is how Chester landed the big one.
Thank you very much. You know I have to say it. It is a great day in South Carolina.
They broke ground on Chester's $568 million GD Tire plant a year ago. And now the global manufacturer based in Singapore is hiring the first of 1,700 new workers.
It was a game changer. I think the site was exactly what they were looking for. The location within the state and the region was what they were looking for.
You still can't see the GD plant from the road, but it's right across from Sunfiber, a Chinese textile company that also built its first U.S. plant in Chester, which raises the question, are Charlotte and its suburban South Carolina counties partners or competitors vying for the same foreign jobs?
When they look at North Carolina and South Carolina, they call it the Carolinas. Very rare do you hear them differentiate between North and South Carolina.
We compete in a very aggressive, friendly manner, and we're going to win some, they're going to win some. Sometimes companies will put facilities in both states and we all benefit. So that's a win for everybody.
In this case, maybe even the Hornets. Charlotte Chamber says no firm commitments yet from Chinese investors after their road trip with the Hornets, but what they did come back with is what they call a pocket full of contacts and leads, which they hope to turn into a slam dunk with Chinese investors eventually. Amy?
Thanks so much, Jeff. Now, the Chamber says after years of recruiting overseas, Charlotte is home to about 985 foreign firms, employing more than 68,000 workers, but less than about 40 of those international companies are from China. Joining me now is Bob Morgan, president of the Charlotte Chamber. Bob, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Great to be with you, Amy.
You guys are just onward and upward constantly. I've had the good fortune to serve on the Chamber board just over a year now, and I'm so impressed with all that you do and the machine that you have moving forward to attract those businesses. Not just here in the United States. We saw in that story, they're coming from everywhere to be in Charlotte.
So of our two economic developers at the Charlotte Chamber, one is a native of Munich. He spends regular time in Western Europe. Germany is where we have more companies from than anywhere else. Last year, he made his first recruitment trip to India, picked up about 20 leads that we think will turn into jobs in the months and years ahead. 8 years ago, Charlotte had 5 Chinese-based companies in this region. We hired a young woman who's a native of Shanghai, Eileen Kai. She has spent regular time in Asia, China in particular. Today we have almost 40 Chinese companies here in this market.
And we had another big coup that we had a pretty special visitor joining us from China not so long ago.
A couple of weeks ago was the Chinese New Year, or what they call the Spring Festival. We had a visit from the Chinese ambassador to the U.S., the first time that an ambassador from China has ever spent that holiday outside of Washington, D.C. And there's a direct correlation to the Chinese investment in North and South Carolina that he came in part to celebrate, to promote the business that's here, but also the opportunities to grow Chinese investment in North and South Carolina.
Because there really is a connection. While Charlotte might be a little bit landlocked, and we don't have as much land as our friends just over the border in South Carolina do, the correlation and the synergy that we can have working together really does give us more economic impact and more economic possibilities.
Well, so you talk about the region. If you're from China, the region includes the Carolinas, and that would include the Port of Charleston, which is a major entryway for product that's manufactured in Asia. When you're talking about Charlotte specifically, you talk about the great highway network we have, rail. We're connected up and down the East Coast, but you have to talk about the Charlotte Airport and the 700 plus flights a day. The Charlotte Airport makes us a global trading center long into the future.
Talk about some of the things that are in your toolbox to help you lure those companies from overseas and here in the U.S. as well. Well,
the general things that bring any company, whether they're foreign or domestic, to Charlotte. We have a cost of living, a cost of doing business that's 95% of the national average. You can save money here. We have a workforce that's large, 2.5 million people in this region. That workforce is growing rapidly. It is a skilled group of people who know how to run things and make things. It's increasingly young, it's increasingly diverse, and that diversity gives us a competitive advantage. The connectability of the airport is another key component right up there that allows us to compete for projects that maybe our size wouldn't indicate we should be competitive for, but we can play above our weight, if you will.
And incentives. Incentives play a key role as well.
Certainly for the largest projects, and we've seen our share of the largest projects. If you're going to compete with other states around us in the Southeast, if you're going to compete with other states across the country, incentives are an indication of a state's willingness to do that. For about a year, North Carolina had a question mark on its back as the legislature struggled with how and whether or not to reauthorize what we call the JDIG, the Jobs Development Investment Grant. As long as it took the legislature to answer that question in late September, when they found agreement on their budget, they also found agreement on the incentives package. And in our opinion, the version they adopted is the preferable one. And so literally in late September, the governor signed the legislation on a Friday. On Monday, the phone started ringing from consultants and projects that had been on hold that said, okay, now we're ready to move forward, that there's some clarity there. So we had record-breaking years for job growth in 13 and 14. 15 was a bit off, still a good year, a bit off. The incentives uncertainty played a key role in that. The fourth quarter was strong after that question got resolved. We're optimistic that 16 is going to be another strong year for job growth.
You know, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. That's my phrase. And so what did we learn from the situation when GE was looking at coming to this area but chose another opportunity? I think there are opportunities for growth even in a strong economy like we have.
Yeah. It was great to be on a short list. We got a look from GE, and there perhaps has not been a bigger corporate headquarters relocation project to compete for, certainly in my career. They ultimately chose Boston. They're not moving far from Connecticut. But they said that it's the PhD level research in the 50+ institutions of higher learning in the greater Boston area. More research gets done there than anywhere else on the planet. That research finds its way into their economy. It creates innovation and technology, and General Electric wants to be connected to that. We know that Charlotte, it's wonderful that UNC Charlotte got into the PhD level business roughly 10 years ago. The growth they've had has been impressive. We know that we still have less of that R&D type research here than in other markets we compete with, just right here in the Southeast, much less in Boston. So the opportunity for us, let's continue to grow UNC Charlotte. That means year in and year out when it comes to the budget battles in Raleigh. We need to make sure that UNC Charlotte and its programs that serve the economy get funded. It means we all have an opportunity on March 15th in North Carolina. The Connect NC bonds, $2 billion, no tax increase required, to invest in universities, community colleges, state parks, among other things. $90 million will go toward a new science building at UNC Charlotte. This is a great opportunity to invest in our future to help make us even more competitive than we already are.
Bob Morgan, president of the Chamber here in Charlotte, thank you so much for all that you do. Thanks for sharing this information, and we're excited to see all those new jobs coming this way.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to be with you, Amy.
Right now, you're probably watching me from your comfy couch or your favorite chair. Imagine if you didn't have either, or a place to call home. These photos show volunteers hitting the streets of Mecklenburg County working overnight to count the number of people living in shelters or on the streets. The annual point-in-time count took place at the end of January and provides a snapshot of how many people are homeless right here in Mecklenburg County. Many local organizations work to provide these people with a permanent place to call home. Carolina Impact's Danielle Koser explains how one area program makes progress.
In the middle of this West Charlotte neighborhood, Catrice Champion and her kids bow their heads and count their blessings.
Heavenly Father, kindly hold.
Grateful for the things many people take for granted.
Amen.
Food to eat, a yard with room to run, and a home to call their own.
It's the key to our home.
Before moving into this neighborhood in 2014, Catrice spent nearly 5 years bouncing back and forth between temporary housing, hotels, and the Salvation Army Center of Hope, juggling 2 or 3 jobs at a time. She also struggled with depression.
And it just felt like you couldn't win for losing.
Many of our families and residents have mental illness, have lots of baggage, lots of barriers that have developed over a lifetime of situations that were very difficult, very painful.
Pamela Jeffson, Executive Director of Supporting Housing Communities, says Catrice's story isn't uncommon. The organization works to provide permanent housing to men, women, and children who are homeless, have a disability, including mental illness, developmental difficulty, or a history of substance abuse, and make less than 30% of the area median income, which is just under $55,000 for a family of 4 here in Mecklenburg County. In our area, nearly 400 people live in emergency shelters or on the streets, seeking rest and refuge on benches and doorways and on the Greenway.
People who are homeless are so much more like us. If you don't know people who have been homeless, you have certain ideas about who they are and why they're homeless and what they've done to create this situation for themselves.
Catrice's financial troubles started shortly before Hurricane Katrina. She lived in New Orleans when the storm hit, destroying nearly everything she owned.
We lost the photos, the furnishing. We only had the clothes on our back. What we tried to carry with us, we couldn't.
On her coffee table, Catrice keeps this photo album, sparsely filled with family photos she's managed to keep intact, including this one of her son, who was just weeks old when Hurricane Katrina struck.
All of us are really not that far away from homelessness. We have supports that we rely on. Many of the homeless people that I know had supports that they relied on. And through a series of crises, it became a tsunami of trouble that caused them to become homeless.
Supportive Housing Communities began offering scattered site housing in 2013. The program offers publicly funded, affordable homes throughout a number of middle-class neighborhoods in the area. Supportive Housing Communities leases the homes from local realtors, then sublets them to people who are chronically homeless. Realtor Pearl Smith calls the partnership a win-win because it provides permanent housing to those who desperately need it, and
for our company, the payment is on time.
She says she's grateful for the chance to use her resources to help others.
This is our way of fighting homelessness. It gives them an opportunity to live a normal life.
Each month, tenants like Catrice pay 30% of their income towards rent, a small price to pay to finally have a roof over their heads and their dignity restored.
When I had my 2 crates and that first mattress and nothing else, I felt we were all moved in. We slept together like sardines in our bed. We didn't need a full house, you know? That was it. They didn't just give us a key. They said this is permanent housing. I'm so thankful for it.
According to a recent UNC Charlotte study, supportive site housing also benefits the community by saving taxpayers thousands of dollars each year. Data shows a chronically homeless person costs the community nearly $40,000 annually between medical, judicial, and other costs. That amount drops to about $10,000 when supportive housing communities help someone.
Nationwide, the average success rate for permanent supportive housing is around 85%, and we're running about a 98% success rate.
Success measured by statistics and by the smiles shared by Catrice and her kids as they make memories in a home they can finally call their own. For Carolina Impact, I'm Danielle Koser reporting.
Thanks so much, Danielle. Supportive Housing Communities served nearly 250 people last year. That's a 70% increase from the year before. The organization hosts its annual luncheon next Tuesday, February 23rd at the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Well, 8 months ago, Charleston, South Carolina experienced what was known as one of the worst tragedies in the city's history. 9 people were shot and killed at Mother Emanuel AME Church. One of the victims was Cynthia Graham Hurd, the sister of former North Carolina State Senator Malcolm Graham. Carolina Impact's Tonisha Johnson sat down with Graham to talk about his struggles with forgiveness and how he's working through his grief.
I did not forgive then, and I do not forgive today. It doesn't mean that I don't have forgiveness in my heart. It means that I'm still searching for understanding, and my journey to forgiveness has not even started yet.
Although several months have passed, Malcolm Graham admits he struggles each day with the death of his sister, Cynthia Graham Hurd. She was one of the victims killed inside Mother Emanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina last summer.
This guy killed 9 folks, terrorized 5 others who were there, I'm not sure there's any forgiveness in hatred and racism and discrimination.
He's referring to Dylan Roof, who came to the church on a Wednesday night and was welcomed by members. As they were ending their Bible study,
police in South Carolina are looking for a gunman following a shooting at a church in downtown Charleston Wednesday night.
He pulled out a gun and started firing at them.
We do know there are several victims, but it's unclear at this time how many and if there are any fatalities.
It was calculated, it was planned, it was premeditated.
Cynthia had been a librarian in Charleston for over 30 years. To her brother, she was his friend, confidant, and political advisor. She was also the matriarch of their family. The news of her death came exactly 1 month after Graham's oldest sister was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer.
There was a lot to wrestle with in a short period of time.
Malcolm wanted to make sure that Cynthia would be remembered as more than just a victim of a senseless shooting. As a man of faith, when he reflects on the tragedy, he wrestles with the intentional act of violence and what he's been taught about forgiveness. Graham says it's difficult for him to understand why God would allow such a thing like this to happen. While he continues searching for answers, he finds comfort through music, conversations.
There's not a day that goes by, really, that I don't talk about Cynthia, because someone is approaching me to talk about her. And that's been very, very therapeutic.
And looking at family photos.
She was just a great spirit, easy to talk to, and cool as the April breeze. There was nothing that we couldn't talk about. She was very sharp. She was a sharp dresser. She was a beautiful woman.
But one of the things that has helped him the most is learning that grieving is a process.
When you go through that type of trauma, it does, I mean, it's a blow. It knocks you to your knees.
Since the shooting, Pastor Sheldon Shipman has helped Malcolm understand his grief.
The main thing we have to understand, even as we process it with our faith, is that you have experienced trauma. And when you go through a traumatic situation, it is not a instantaneous, doesn't go away magically.
As Graham is now working through his grief, friends like Pastor Shipman believe that he's making great strides. And as a matter of fact, he also believes that he's at a turning point to where he can be led into a place of restoration. And like a phoenix, he'll rise again. Graham says we need to have more conversations about race to address shootings like this that are motivated by hate.
Blacks, whites, rich, poor, young, old, we all have to get to work to solve this, what I call America's greatest Achilles heels, past and present, the issue of race and racism in our country.
While the past months have been one of the most difficult periods of his life, Graham wants to focus on the future and the positive impact he can make. One way he hopes to make a difference is by making another run for Congress. He's also writing a book entitled Forgive Me Not as a tribute to Cynthia's life and his struggle to forgive. For Carolina Impact, I'm Tanisha Johnson reporting.
Thanks so much, Tanisha. Graham hopes to have his book on bookshelves by the end of the year, even on the shelves where his sister worked, in what is now known as the Cynthia Graham Hurd St. Andrews Regional Library in Charleston. Well, next, it's time to shift gears and head down the road to Gaston County. Tonight's one-tank trip takes us to Cherryville and the C. Greer Beam Truck Museum. Carolina Impact's Jason Terzis takes us inside the only truck museum in the Tar Heel State.
The spirit of one of America's great trucking companies lives on in Cherryville. Carolina Freight may be long gone, but thanks to this museum, folks can relive history. Serving as North Carolina's only truck museum and one of just a handful in the United States, the Greer Beam Truck Museum has been delighting people for decades.
And these trucks do go from the oldest progressively all the way around the room to the newest one, the B model Mack over there on the other corner.
The history of this place stretches back to 1932. Fresh out of college, Charles Greer Beam borrowed $500 to buy a used Chevy truck. Working out of a small office, he made calls to get his business up and running.
And the second one in line there is Greer Beam's first truck. the 31 model Chevrolet with the oversized wooden bed to give him maximum capacity on those long trips to Florida.
From hauling coal for Lincoln County schools to transporting eggs and fruit back from Florida, Beam struggled during the Depression, but managed to keep his business afloat. It was then rebranded as Carolina Freight Carriers Corporation, taking its red and black colors from Beam's alma mater, NC State.
Mr. Beam started Carolina Freight back when trucking was relatively new. It was a very young industry.
Eastbound and down, loaded up and trucking.
As the trucking industry grew, so did Carolina Freight. By 1970, it had become one of the largest general freight carriers in the nation.
In the heyday, it was textile related. In fact, that was the backbone of Carolina Freight in the 60s and 70s.
In the 80s and into the early 90s, total revenue exceeded $5 billion, and the workforce grew to more than 10,000. But what took decades to build took just a few years to crumble.
Mr. Beam retired in 1988. He died in 92, and the company was sold in 95. So I guess you could surmise that once his involvement went away, the company soon went away.
Increased competition, the loss of big contracts, and rising employee costs all contributed to the company's demise.
They had a totally new management team that the old employees wouldn't recognize, and it just seemed that the time was right to sell the company and take the proceeds.
No one really ever thought about Carolina Freight not being here. I expected to retire with that company.
But before retiring, Beam set out to solidify Carolina Freight's legacy. So as part of the company's 50th anniversary in 1982, he opened the Greer Beam Truck Museum, right on the very spot where the company started. Built in 1930, the old Shell station in downtown Cherryville is now in the National Register of Historic Places. The museum building next door opened in 1987.
We have 14 trucks on display, and they range in age from 1927 to 1962. Our newest truck in the museum is 54 years old.
Trucking, got my chips cashed in, keep trucking.
Encompassing more than 7,500 square feet, the museum showcases Beam's trucks and tons of vintage memorabilia. Joe and Sandy Dismukes run the museum. They each spent 27 years working at Carolina Freight before it shut down.
That's been the wonderful thing about my wife and I had a total of 54 years service with the company, and we still had this keen interest and love of Carolina Freight, and we were given the opportunity to manage the museum.
From families to former truckers, there's always a steady stream of people coming in. Last year, the museum had visitors from 34 states and 4 foreign countries.
It's wonderful that somebody would take the time and the money that it takes to set this up.
It's really beautiful. We've thoroughly enjoyed coming and seeing this.
Perhaps, though, the best part for those visiting the museum, it's free.
We primarily operate off of an endowment fund that was started when Carolina Freight was still in operation.
Between the endowment and employee fund drive when the museum first opened and donations, the museum has been able to remain open all these years.
That money has been wisely invested over the years and very frugally managed. And we are operating off that endowment still after 33 years, which is amazing.
The Dismukes say running the museum has allowed them to reconnect with former Carolina Freight employees and keep the history and memory of this once great company alive. For Carolina Impact, I'm Jason Terzis reporting.
Thanks so much, Jason. You just never know where we're going to end up next in our one-tank trips. Well, the Beam Truck Museum in Cherryville is about an hour drive west of uptown Charlotte. It's open Thursdays through Saturdays from 10 to 3 or by appointment. To learn more, visit the Carolina Impact page at pbscharlotte.org. Before we go, I want to remind you about our 3rd annual STEM Awards on May 5th. We'll host a ceremony at Central Piedmont Community College to recognize terrific teens and teachers in 6th through 12th grades. Now, there are 13 different categories in science, technology, engineering, and math for you to compete in. The deadline to enter is less than a month away, March 14th. You'll find all the details on our homepage at pbscharlotte.org. Well, that does it for us this week. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your time and look forward to seeing you back here again next time on Carolina Impact. Good night, my friends.
A production of PBS Charlotte.